welcome to Maximum Foods Inside Track. First week of autumn here in Queensland. The weather's still beautiful. Everyone's still enjoying the beautiful climate that we have here in Queensland. Let's have a look at the dairy market. Sorry folks, it's not going to be the most exciting of reports today. There hasn't been a lot of volatility or action or market direction either way. The last 2 weeks have been quite subdued in demand, and supply falling back in the New Zealand, Australian region as well, which sort of balancing pricing out. As a general rule, all commodities have remained relatively flat. Let's have a look at whole milk powder first. Whole milk powder nudged up about 3% last night on the auction. However, yeah, we don't see some real heavy demand from the major trading regions, but we also see New Zealand supply peeling back into the winter months. So things seem relatively level there. It's going to really need a real bolster in demand over the next 2 to 3 months to drive that pricing upwards, but at the moment it's looking to be a relatively stable outlook for whole milk powder. Moving across to skim milk powder, once again not a lot of excitement there, nudged back a percent or two last night on the auction. EU skim still in reasonably plentiful supply. US skim market is still in good supply with pricing quite flat. Still a bit of a premium for New Zealand skim globally, and that remains. However, yeah, the major trading regions still not going hand over foot to buy skim at the moment, hence quite a flat outlook on skim. Having a look at butter and AMF, without sounding like a broken record, a relatively flat outlook on the market as well. US butterfat pricing remaining quite consistent. EU, after a sharp decline a couple of months ago, has settled with a bit of an uptick with retail demand domestically over in the EU. In the US, in the New Zealand and Australian outlook, Australian butter still very tight in supply because of the contraction in Australian milk. In New Zealand, we've seen probably China not being the main driver of demand out of there. We saw an uptick in last GDT on the basis of Southeast Asian buyers buying in and diving in and purchasing product. They weren't as present last night on the auction, therefore it went back to a relatively flat result. We still have that question mark over Chinese demand on fats, so if they were to dive back in, then we would see a fair uptick in demand, especially given New Zealand tailing off at the end of the season where supply won't be as abundant. So yeah, a bit of a question mark, and probably the more bullish out of the commodities at the moment would be butterfat. Having a look at cheese. So cheese, the biggest mover on the auction last night, down 10%, which is indicative of EU and US supplies. So yeah, obviously selling a lot more into those major trading regions that would normally purchase off the GDT. So New Zealand cheese in less demand, hence the result last night. Cheese in Australia still reasonably well poised with flat-ish pricing. Demand in retail and the food service sector still quite strong, which is holding sort of pricing up in Oz. And a lot of the manufacturers obviously seeing that return, or the processors seeing that higher return in the cheese whey mix and producing more of it. So we should see a good even balance of supply and demand in Australia for cheese in the next 3 to 6 months. Finishing off with whey powder. So on the sweet whey powder side of things, as mentioned in the cheese section there before, more cheese production means more whey production. So in the US, EU and Australia, New Zealand, as people are changing their product mix or skewing their product mix to achieve whey production, we should see consistent consistent supply of whey powder globally, which will keep a cap on pricing. So a relatively bearish outlook for sweet whey. On the protein side of things, in a similar vein, supply is looking quite good globally, and demand is a bit on the nose. So pricing, it looks quite bearish, and the market looks quite bearish on proteins as well for the short term. Major players such as India and China, also a bit of an unknown there, so that can uplift quite quickly if they were to come back into the market. So thanks very much for listening to today's Inside Track. Once again, quite an uneventful fortnight in dairy in terms of the market, quite flat. A lot of people still sitting back looking for some sort of market direction. But in the meantime, it looks to be a relatively bearish or flat short to medium term market. Thanks once again for listening. A shout out for International Women's Day today. Both our Laverton office and Maxim Brisbane office have had a beautiful morning tea in recognition of that. Stay safe, look after one another, and I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.